they brought instant coffee into the market into Australia, and there was some big rumours that those grinders at the end of the supermarket shelves was cutting babies' fingers off and all this sort of horrible things. People getting their hands stuck in the grinder in the supermarket. So all of a sudden, whole bean coffee was taken out of supermarkets and replaced by instant coffee.
Hey everybody, my name is Charles Nick, one of the co-founders of Third Wave Water, and we're joined here with the one and only Sean Edwards. He has done a lot in the coffee industry for a number of years, and that's why we're so excited to talk to him, because we're going to get a different perspective from the down under as well versus America, because he lives in both, breathes in both cultures to understand a lot of the different perspective. And we're going to see a lot of the fun projects he's been up to. So to start off, what got you into coffee in the first place?
Actually,
Coffee.
yeah, a bit accidental. I probably started like everyone in the industry. You started with instant, then all of a sudden, brewed coffee came along, and you tasted different. You wanted to know why, and I'm an engineering background, electrical.
Oh, really? Electrical. Okay, I was electronics engineering.
Electrical engineering. So I like to turn the rock over and see what's underneath it, and I did the same with coffee, and then become a bit of a passion, and then led into actually starting my first cafe. And when I did back in the early 90s, there was not a lot of education in that market.
Well, how'd you get to the first cafe? You just unturned a rock and then you're into the first cafe.
Basically, we bought
nobody making coffee over here.
No, we bought a property in a town of 400 people, so probably destined for failure straight away. But we ended up going into this business and starting a very successful business that people would travel for hundreds of kilometres to come and visit.
What town was that?
A place called Comboyne. It's up in the mid-north coast of New South Wales in Australia.
Okay.
It's called the Udder Cow Cafe. We're in a dairy predominantly area, and lots of black and white cows. So we went down that whole dairy theme. Didn't know anything about espresso, so we went to the supermarket and started buying some beans off the shelf, and we did Lavazza to start with. It was
okay.
And when I looked up the packet, there was a little number there about horses, and so I went over and sort of done my first barista course, and there was only course happening in Australia at the time.
Oh wow!
Yeah, none of the colleges were educating, and I just fell in love with coffee after, and the educational side of it, and that sort of led me into media, barista events, training companies.
Yeah,
which I've been part of for a long time.
So you've really been on the leading edge for honestly coffee in Australia. Especially if they only had like one class going on.
What else
is going on, guys?
I jumped at the opportunity so I come out of the industry where adult education in the mining industry was very important at the time. There's a lot of workplace change. But so I pursued to find out why there wasn't a standard in coffee, which led me to meet other coffee people who sort of had the same opinion, and we wrote the first standard for the coffee industry in Australia, which soon become a world standard. We later shared it with the SCA educators, and then so we were sort of Australia was really ahead of the game in having the first standard in the world on espresso coffee.
Oh, that's fascinating. The Italians, they would disagree with you, or they'd be
I think they
molto bene.
The Italians held it very close to their heart. They didn't like sharing at the time. I think they probably come from a very competitive market and didn't want to. They had the roots in Australia to start with. And they didn't like to share their skill and knowledge very well.
It's fascinating.
So especially with the English tea drinkers, which we were.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was fun. But it was a good start for myself, because understanding the technical side of coffee made you appreciate a lot more, and understand the whole process.
So between espresso and I guess pour over drip, like where do you fall out on like enjoy the most?
We skipped pour over drip in the 70s in Australia. Like we basically everyone was obviously brewed coffee in, right up to 1970s, and then we had this beautiful brand called Nestle come along, and actually they brought instant coffee into the market into Australia. and there's some big rumours that those grinders at the end of the supermarket shelves was cutting babies' fingers off and all this sort of horrible things. People getting their hands stuck in the grinder in the supermarket. So all of a sudden, whole bean coffee was taken out of supermarkets and replaced by instant coffee.
That's
One brand, that Nescafe.
Sounds like they did like oh no, I'm gonna forget it. Nikola Tesla was against Edison, and they were like AC
Yeah,
versus
that's
DC.
AC/DC. Well, as a what's Ed,
We're gonna scare tactic.
as a what's Ed Edison approach to to the coffee industry.
Exactly. Wow, that is so bizarre. I
Yeah.
never heard that before.
But one interesting story, everyone in Australia always thinks it's the Italians and the Greeks that, started the coffee culture in Australia, but it's actually the Americans.
Really?
Yeah, so, we were predominantly a tea drinking nation up into there was no such thing as coffee, except amongst the immigration side of things with the Italians and Greeks coming in before the First World War, after the First World War.
Yeah.
And then during the Second World War, we had thousands and thousands of American troops rock up on our doorstep. So the American the American Army actually brought in the first roasters into Australia, first commercial roasters. So we end up with this huge, need for coffee, and the American servicemen, they weren't going to drink tea, so they yeah.
So is that? I guess that would be kind of similar to the whole story of Americano, was like them giving.
Yeah, because that's sort of that
They're like
espresso machine.
Espresso?
The espresso machine was already there, so that's why I suppose the espresso culture's strong.
Yeah.
But brewed coffee was that was very much of the process at that time, but we lost it. That's the sad thing. We lost it in the 70s, and we're only just refining brewed coffee now. But
Yeah, last time I was in Italy and I got an Americano and they brought out an espresso and they gave me a thing of hot water and I'm like, why is this separate?
yeah.
And then I guess that's what they would do back then.
Yeah.
It's kind of just still.
Well, it's funny in Melbourne.
Dilute it yourself.
Yeah, we call it your Americano. We call it a long black.
Okay.
But in Melbourne, they'll basically call it a long macchiato. So then they did that basically for the English heritage that the Italians are drinking their espresso, and the English guy he was drinking tea, basically got espresso poured on top of some hot water. So that's how they called it a long macchiato at the time.
It's funny. Yeah, I've never heard the long macchiato.
Yeah, very much a Melbourne thing still. Yeah.
So besides history and kind of walking through even the history of coffee in Australia, which is fascinating, today, how would you look at coffee culture differences, specifically between America and Australia?
Yeah, we're going to massive cafe culture influence Australia. People use cafes as it's part of their lifestyle, so it's really a big part of our way of living. Our cafe culture is very good. If you've probably seen some Australian cafes in the US, that are starting to appear here now, but good food, good coffee, all espresso based. A lot of milk-based drinks. So 95% of the drinks we drink in a cafe are milk-based.
Okay.
So whether plant or dairy, we tend to have very good food. So restaurant quality food. You nearly call it a restaurant if you're an American in Australia, but every cafe really has to offer that service. Espresso bar, which is plenty of them also in the cities, but we'll offer that deli cabinet food. But most good cafes have a very good brunch menu starting at 6 o'clock in the morning. All over Red Rover by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. And the other thing I'm really noticing in the States at the moment, iced drinks here have gone crazy, like cold coffee beverages, like cold brew. Even though Australia's probably got a warm climate, suits that we don't emphasise, those iced coffee drinks as much.
It is a bit insulting to some of the other cultures. I remember working on a project where there were some other British guys, and I would have like an iced tea, and they would be like, "What are you drinking?"
Yeah,
they were totally. So I could see that maybe in your culture being like ice.
Even the hottest day, they'll come and have a hot coffee beverage. Yeah, so tea's a thing you do at home. Tea's really struggling in cafes. So it's probably 2% of total total sales. And the other thing in Australia, like plant-based milks, it makes up for 30% of all cafe beverages at the moment. So you add that up, it's a $13.5 billion coffee industry outside of home.
Yeah.
And you add up 30% of those drinks, 95% of a milk base, 30% of those drinks are plant-based. So, massive volumes in plant-based milks in Australia.
It's interesting. So this is probably all a big part of a magazine. I want you to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah,
The magazine that you're a part of, it's Cafe Culture.
Cafe Culture magazine, yeah.
And I know it's popular in the regions we were talking about earlier, but a
Yeah.
lot of our audience maybe have never heard of it. So how would you explain it to them?
It's been up running for over 20 years now, but we, Cafe Culture, was a print magazine up until COVID, and that sort of put the icing on the cake. Print was dying. We knew that. So we'd already stepped into a good digital platform where we could actually do a lot more and a lot more interactive, media.
Interactive.
So we invested heavily into the digital side of our business, but that's even slowed up now. Everyone's a media person now. Everyone's got a digital camera and a TikTok, and
We don't do that. We don't have a magazine though.
Everyone wants to be a media person. So we've stepped a lot. We've got 25 years of contacts, industry, experience.
Yeah.
So we're using that now to consult to people. So I do a lot of consulting around the world in all different facets of cafe supply, whether it's a service, a product, or just connecting people together. So that's probably been my skill.
Okay.
And that's why I'm traveling the world, bringing small events together. Like we run several different events around the world. And Golden Bean's probably our largest.
Yeah, we're super excited for Houston this year.
Yeah, you guys participated last year, and Golden Bean's amazing. We've got the largest roasting competition in the world. We've judged over 20,000 coffees in the last 10 years.
How do you get through? Oh, you're saying over the
10 years, yeah.
How do you get to 20,000 coffees in one event? That's insane.
Well, we judge 3,500 coffees a day. A year between the Australasian event and the US event. And that's all, through having lots of judges. Like most of our events will have 100 roasters participating.
Yeah.
It's over 4 days, and you're judging, up to 1,000 coffees, which means it's about 5,000 cuppings to get to that one winner.
It doesn't even seem like a real number.
No, but it gives us some real advantage. We get to taste the best coffees in the world. And I don't think there's any other event in the world where you can cup so many coffees over a short period of time.
Yeah.
You see what's on trend. You see what's in the market at the time and what's going to be next year's flavor profile. And whether it's a change that's happening, at the roasting level or at the processing level, or at the you guys know very well, at the water level, which is 99.6% of what goes in the coffee.
That is super fun. You get to see a lot of the trends ahead of time. Are there any trends that you would say from the last event would be like, this was probably the number one trend we saw coming in?
Yeah, well, fermentation's been, yeast processing, fermentation, fruit yeast especially. Very risky when you're entering a competition where you've got 100 judges. Some of them have got very old opinions of what coffee should taste like versus what, is going to happen. We tried to sort of put some rules in place to see if we wouldn't allow those coffees to enter, but that's where the market's going, so we can't stop it. It's got to be there, but we still also got to imagine. We always say to our head judges when we brief them, is this a coffee you drink every day of the week? Or is it something you just like there and then in the moment? So,
would you split it as just its own category then? So it's like you're either non-fermented or you are fermented?
It's too hard. It's crossing over, especially in filtered coffees. Like filtered coffees, people will gravitate towards a tea-like florally flavor profile. When you're cupping a lot of coffees and you have that one, sweeter, fruitier, flowery profile, your
bet
brain
it's
will
funny.
gravitate to that coffee, and that's what's seeing. But it's a bit harder in espresso to translate, but we're starting to see that now. It's the first time ever we run a World Series of Golden Bean between US against Australia, and we've seen this big gravitation to espresso with fermented coffees.
Yeah.
They did well in same coffee did well in filter, and then also did well in espresso, where it was not only super specific flavor profiles of fruit, they also had a juiciness that you'd expect and body that you had in a good base espresso.
Would you, if you were going to be fortuitous, guess the future for this golden bean? Is there anything you would be like, I bet this is probably, or maybe this is a bad thing to say, like
Yeah,
to even guess?
we can pick the countries that are really experimenting now in processing. You got to look. There was no experimentation in process for probably 500 years, and so the only last 10 years you start to see that. There was always naturally occurring processing from Indonesia with you know when
Yeah.
they basically store the cherry in a plastic bag in the sun for giving that winey sort of coffees. And obviously monsoon Malabar coffees where they're washing the coffee beans with salt and
Oh,
washing
wow.
them off. So you always had
So now,
some form of processing that was different around the world. But I think wash coffees now are really on everyone's tips of their tongue. You know what I mean? Like the only way natural coffees was always for a big time we had a lot of Ethiopian coffees were the star, and then the geishas come into play, which is a varietal that we never seen on the market before. So we pick those trends before they actually happen.
wow.
Yeah, there's that.
So if you really want to pay attention to the trends, see what happens, and especially on the winners, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure.
That's,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So when is the event in Houston?
It's going to be the 17th of September
Okay.
in Houston, Texas. We picked Houston because Texas is a cool state. I'm from Australia, and Texas seems like it could be a part of Australia.
I
Everyone,
lived in Houston for about 5 years.
oh, nice. Yeah.
That was my past life.
Yeah, you all come back now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's everyone's super friendly and exciting. Excited. Like I think a lot of these, around the world, you'll have coffee cities, where they're famous for their coffees, but they also come with attitude. I've seen it in Melbourne, I've seen it in Portland and Seattle, but it's cool, but too cool sometimes. Like I love going to a new space where people are excited again about the product.
Yeah.
It's a social lubricant. We really want to see people still enjoying it without making it a too stuffy.
Yeah.
I've seen it with food. You get the stuffy restaurants, and we don't want coffee. We want to be accessible to everyone in the market.
Yeah.
And price accessibility as well.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Where can people find you and anything you want them to find?
Yeah, it's
Golden Bean.
goldenbean.com is probably the website's always informative. I've got some, we obviously also our Instagram, we keep that updated fairly well.
Okay.
But obviously, if they want real information and information about entering Golden Bean, definitely go onto our website, and they'll lead you straight to the web portal that we created for the competition.
Okay.
But it's really good. But it's great to have you guys there last year. That was a real experiment in my mind. Now, again, liking to turn the rock over, I was very wary about having third wave involved, like adding an element into the water after filtration's already taken a lot of stuff out. That scared me a little bit. But I think I enjoyed the process, and it was very easy to use. You made it very usable. And I do believe that the coffees were probably highlighted a bit more than we've had in the past. Like,
Oh, wow.
and I know we've done a lot of events in the States, and every state water quality is a big issue.
Yeah.
They go from one state to the next. You do see some you know, and it happens in Australia as well. You know, different hardnesses, different
So
TDS.
here's a fun
Yeah.
one. I when I was in last time I was in Korea, they were explaining to me there's kind of two different training camps in Australia, one north and one south. Is that true? Or maybe it's east and west, but it was
Yeah.
like, and they were splitting it based on, I guess, potentially the water was different in this region of Australia
Yeah,
versus the other.
we've got some very heavy waters down in say it's more central, as you know, going to Adelaide and
Okay.
Western Australia, where you know you're in desert, so you know water's still a sought after resource, you know. So and so water quality can be really, so filtration's a big part of what you need. But some, you know, ROs, you know, if you went to a state like South Australia, you know, you're definitely going to have RO in your water.
Okay.
You know, we're some parts of Queensland are the same.
Huh.
You know, we've got drier climate, drier, you know, resources. So we're in a very arid, you know, country, you know. But on the east coast of Australia, it's lush, you know. But you know, it's mountainous, it's rainforest, it's coastal.
Okay,
So you've got
that may be what it is.
plentiful water sources, you know. Yeah.
Well, everybody, if you can, please follow Sean. He's at goldenbean.com. Find him on Instagram, all the fun socials, and leave him any questions or comments in this video too. So we're going to be posting, this is live, so this will be reposted, and then I'm also going to have it on YouTube as well. Maybe the audio is cleaned up a little bit, but thank you so much for
Thanks,
your
Charles, and I appreciate it. I hope I spoke slow enough that people can understand my accent.
Yeah. Oh, I can hear you fine. I'm sure they'll find.
Thank you.
But thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.